Hello, and welcome to Aviation Deep Dive. This video is brought to you by War Thunder. In the whirlwind of fighter development that took place during the late 30s and early 40s, it's easy to get swept away with the flagship designs from the world's superpowers, the Spitfires, 109s, and P-51s of the world. However, at a time when exports from foreign countries were not always financially viable or even numerically feasible, there was a fair amount of aircraft and specifically frontline fighter development for more minor nations. A fighter born from convenience, and from the industry of a comparatively minor nation, with the full intention that it should be able to go toe-to-toe with the best in the world at the time. Today, we'll be looking at the Rogožarski IK-3. Of Yugoslavian origins, the Yugoslav aviation industry had been considered throughout most of the 1930s second-rate, in comparison to some of its more powerful neighbors. The quick switch from biplanes to monoplanes had left the already trailing Yugoslavs in the dust, and so it was decided by aircraft designers Ljubomir Ilić and Kosta Sivsev, who were themselves responsible for the earlier IK-1 and IK-2 designs. In 1933, the design on a new fighter aircraft should move away from the design principles of the previous years. Both agreed that the biplane and high-wing monoplane configurations were on the way out, and in light of a new generation of fast, sleek bombers, a good fighter should be capable of catching them. With the engines available at the time, this would mean that a low-wing monoplane with retractable landing gear was the only sensible bet. Staying mainly as projections or ideas, serious work began on an aircraft that would feature these design characteristics in mid-1936, in great secrecy. Upon completion of the preliminary blueprints and drawings, the aircraft outlined was a sleek, thoroughly modern fighter aircraft, just 8 meters in length and 10.3 in span, to be powered by a 910 horsepower Hispano-Suiza 12Y engine of French origin. The documentation was turned over to the military authorities for review, but unfortunately it took far longer to be accepted than initially expected. This stemmed mainly from the fact that the Yugoslav authorities were not nearly so forward-thinking as the engineers that worked for them, so the blueprints of a sleek low-wing monoplane fighter with retractable landing gear would have sat in stark contrast to the biplanes and parasol aircraft that were considered the standard. Luckily, it was accepted, but not until March 1937, almost a full year since they'd been submitted. Nevertheless, given the go-ahead, plans were put in place to begin construction of a first prototype at the Rogožarski plant in Belgrade, and production began. By early 1938, the aircraft was completed. Rolling out of its hangar doors, the aircraft was, in hindsight, clearly indicative of a new generation of fighters, and its performance estimates thoroughly outstripped its contemporaries in the Royal Yugoslav Air Force, such as the Nimrod, IK-2, and Hawker Fury. Thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. War Thunder is a free-to-play game available on both console and PC, and boasts over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships of 10 major nations, taking us all the way from the biplanes of the early 30s and armored cars of the 1920s to the modern-day fighter jets and main battle tanks of today. War Thunder boasts extremely immersive combat with super detailed vehicles, really nice looking graphics, and even authentic sound effects for all the historical vehicles. You can join the 70 million players today in epic PvP battles and discover the incredible wealth of content War Thunder has to offer. The draw for me personally is, unsurprisingly, War Thunder's Aircraft Simulator mode, which allows you to fly all the aircraft with realistic controls in the cockpit view, which is incredibly immersive, being able to have World War II dogfights and some of the really nice looking cockpit models too. As I mentioned, it's free and available on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, so sign up and play today using my link in the description or pinned comment. When you use my link, you'll get a massive bonus pack available for new and returning players if they haven't played for 6 months, which includes 100,000 silver lions, 7 days of premium time, multiple premium vehicles, and an exclusive vehicle decorator. The bonus is only available for a limited time, however, so check out the link and claim your rewards now. Now, back to the video. The fuselage of the aircraft was constructed from a welded steel frame, predominantly skinned in metal sheets and canvas in some areas. The wings, however, were constructed primarily from wood, with the only metal component being the spars that ran throughout their length. Unusually for a first prototype, the aircraft was also fully armed, and decently well by 1938 standards too, with a pair of 7.7mm machine guns and a 20mm HS-9 firing through the propeller hub. On the 14th of April, under the control of Captain Milan Biljanovic, the aircraft took to the skies for the first time, to generally positive feedback. The pilot praised the concentrated firepower in the nose, speed, and maneuverability. Indeed, the aircraft demonstrated a top speed of 520 km an hour, although the Royal Yugoslav Air Force authorities expressed interest in increasing that to a minimum of 540 km an hour. The tests were certainly generally successful, and no major flaws were discovered, but a number of issues and possible improvements were outlined by the officials. It was deemed preferable to increase the available firepower by adding 2 further machine guns in the wings, as well as some minor redesigns to the canopy and flaps. The canopy was deemed fairly low quality, and found to be far too reflective in flight, causing pilots to prefer flying with it rolled back, which of course increased drag. The flaps were considered to be relatively ineffective, and so the design was improved and the angle of deployment increased to improve low-speed flight characteristics. Perhaps the biggest issue, though, was the engine, which consistently overheated and proved very difficult to effectively cool. Eventually, the cooling system was completely redesigned with a more effective radiator. The IK-3 was expected to go through at least 100 hours of flight testing before any big decisions were made in its direction. Authorities were still not completely sold on it. Throughout the summer of 1938, work continued, and development of the aircraft was looking promising. 100 hours of flight time came and went, and by early 1939, the Air Force Commission drafted a recommendation for an order of 12 aircraft to be produced. However, just as all was looking well, the project suffered a major blow. On the 19th of January 1939, during a test flight, pilot Milan Porconi was evaluating the IK-3's dive characteristics and put the aircraft into a steep dive. At well over 600 km an hour and just 400 meters from the ground, the cockpit canopy sheared off, shattering the glass and obscuring the pilot's visibility. Without a clear reference of altitude, Porconi panicked and pulled the stick back sharply. Unfortunately, the IK-3 couldn't handle such a sharp pitch-up at so near its maximum dive speed, and the airframe essentially disintegrated from the right wing root. The IK-3 went into a tailspin and crashed, killing the pilot and destroying the airframe. Although the cause of the accident was not necessarily from any fault with the aircraft, it did cause significant unrest in the Yugoslav Commission, from which had been following the aircraft testing closely. Ultimately, the production order for 12 was delayed by 3 months. The first 6 were delivered to operational squadrons at the end of March 1939, with the other 6 following suit in July. The aircraft equipped the 161st and 167th squadrons based near Zemun. The aircraft would remain in service while the war kicked off in Europe, with only one lost during its first year of service, after a pilot pulled up too sharply after a mock attack on a Potez 25. By early 1941, when the war came knocking on Yugoslavia's door in the form of a full-scale German invasion, 11 IK-3s were operational, with a further 25 under construction. Although the Germans would defeat Yugoslavia in just 12 days, the IK-3 saw significant action against the Luftwaffe. On the 6th of April, 5 IK-3s were scrambled to intercept a Luftwaffe bomber force consisting of over 200 bombers escorted by 120 Bf-109Es. During the ridiculously mismatched fight that ensued, the IK-3s claimed 5 aircraft shot down. Just 3 hours later, the remaining IK-3s were scrambled once again to intercept a second bombing force, though no victories were achieved. Throughout the next 2 days, the aircraft were forced to leave their airbase at Zemun due to unrelenting air attacks, but continued to fly sorties from an auxiliary airbase. A Bf-110 that had strafed the airfield was shot down by an IK-3, with a Stuka taken down by 2 IK-3s the same day. However, by this time, only a handful of the aircraft remained, and with German troops advancing only 15 kilometers away from the airfield, the crews decided to destroy their aircraft rather than let them fall into enemy hands. Despite this, the Luftwaffe did actually manage to catch one intact IK-3 before the Yugoslav surrender on the 18th of April, followed by another one at the end of June. Painted in German colors and insignia, the aircraft were evaluated but kept at Zemun, along with 23 other serviceable Yugoslav aircraft that Germany was intending to give to Croatia. On the airfield, the Germans used a dividing fence to separate the serviceable aircraft from the aircraft intended to be scrapped, and so one night a group of former Yugoslav Air Force mechanics moved the dividing line, resulting in most of the serviceable aircraft, as well as the 2 IK-3s, being scrapped. Although the IK-3's history was cut short, and it never saw much of a service life, it more than proved itself in both performance and in combat. One of the first low-wing modern monoplane fighters of its time, the aircraft undoubtedly proved the capabilities of Yugoslavia's aircraft design sector, and with just a handful of the type on hand, Yugoslav pilots nevertheless managed to score 11 victories with it, in an air battle in which they were thoroughly outnumbered. No small feat. Ultimately, though bigger plans had been had for the aircraft, such as improved future variants with better weaponry, the aircraft met its premature end in an occupied scrapyard, and sadly, none survive to this day. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video, and don't forget to check out the link in the description and pinned comment for those of you who are new or haven't played in 6 months, to receive a massive bonus pack including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more. A huge thanks to my patrons on screen now for supporting the channel, and thank you so much for watching this video of Aviation Deep Dive. Consider liking and subscribing for more weekly content, and please also consider supporting us on Patreon. See you in the skies.